Great. So we welcome everybody who's out there. We're in this strange world where we can't see you, but we trust that you're with us. So we're going to start. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Judy Halpern. I am a facilitator with Learning for a Sustainable Future, and I am also an instructor in the Faculty of Education at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, Ontario. And part of that work took me to be a picture book enthusiast, as my research is centered on using picture books to teach content. And then I'm going to turn it over to my buddy Pamela.
Hi, I'm Pamela Gibson, and I'm a career-long classroom teacher, currently working for Learning for a Sustainable Future as an educational innovator, and also I am an outdoor and community ed champion. So those of you who are out there and learning to get your kids out into the community and outdoors, you're in good hands here. I'm also the lead for the Sustainable Future School. So LSF has created a Sustainable Future School concept and invites all schools across Canada who are interested in making sustainability a focus in their teaching and learning to join together using a simple framework and a learning model. And all schools are supported by LSF for the first 2 years of their journey with PD and with planning help. So consider this for your school and get in touch with me if you want to know more. It's an exciting opportunity to shift your thinking, your school's culture toward a sustainable future. So LSF was founded in 1991 by a diverse group of youth, educators, business leaders, government, and community members. It's a not-for-profit, Canada-wide organization that was created to integrate sustainability education into Canada's education systems. The head office is at York University, but LSF has consultants and outreach all across the country.
So we're going to begin today with a land acknowledgement, and we always want to honor the land that we are on and demonstrate gratitude for those who we share the land with. We are presenting this session today from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee here in Ontario, Southern Ontario. We want to also model and demonstrate how to create a meaningful and a land acknowledgement with your students, and how we can learn to build appreciation and reciprocity with our children. So here are the words of a grade 4 class after a year of visiting their very special spot on the Grand River in Ontario. We would like to acknowledge our special place by the Grand River. We know that the first peoples on this land were the First Nations people. They were the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis. We know they lived off the land. That means they gathered plants to eat and hunted. They lived in nature and knew a lot about nature. We think they felt sad when the land was taken away. We want to acknowledge the land that welcomed us every week. We acknowledge the trees because we could climb them and have fun, the birds for making beautiful sounds, and the river for making a home for ducks and geese. We acknowledge the water for its beautiful reflection when the sun came out and for rushing against the rocks. We could hear the birds near it and all the splashing. And we acknowledge the forest for being so deep and allowing us to discover and have adventures, and for giving us all that space where we could run around. Today's section is focused on these specific goals that we hope we will achieve by the end of this presentation. We'd like to help all of us as educators understand the climate change story, from the science of it to the social eco-justice to sustainability using an inquiry lens. We'd like to build our own story of climate change from our role as educators to citizens of a sustainable, just society, addressing the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and to determine age and grade appropriate best practices within our story to explore resources that promote the Sustainable Development Goals using our own curricula.
So what is sustainability? Well, to direct my own personal thoughts, I've always asked myself this question: how much is enough? But there are lots of definitions of sustainability out there, and they all have a different perspective, and they all help and serve to give us answers and things to think about. So I can tell you back in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, that sustainability was a pretty hard sell. But in 2015, Canada adopted the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, commonly known as the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. The SDGs provide us with a blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals are a call for action by all countries to eliminate hunger and poverty, improve health and education for all, reduce inequalities, ensure sustainable consumption, production, clean energy, and inclusive economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. So, folks, we have our work cut out for us. As educators, we have opportunities every day to highlight sustainability with our kids, to draw connections between the SDGs and the real lives of our students.
So today's session is really focused on bringing light to climate change and the SDGs together, and looking at how far and wide we can go with this topic in the beginning. So we have a few slides here that address sort of the science of climate change in a very, very basic level. But really, and we're going to go through these slides fairly quickly because you're going to get this slide deck. And there's lots of live links throughout the slide deck for you to dig deeper if you'd like to. So the very first thing we need to do, particularly with young children, is understand the difference between weather and climate. The weather reflects short-term conditions of the atmosphere, where climate is the average daily weather for an extended period of time at a particular location. Weather can change from minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, particularly this summer, season to season, and climate is the average of weather over time and space. Now, if you want to investigate this further with your students, there is a wonderful activity from Green Teacher Magazine that walks children through the understanding between the difference of the two. The link is right here, and it takes you directly to that activity. As well, this image, this illustration, which comes from the National Center for Environmental Information, is linked to a little bit more background information for you as the teacher. And again, we're just looking very, very basically at understanding even what is meant by the greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse effect is a process that occurs when gases in the Earth's atmosphere trap the sun's heat. This process makes the Earth much warmer than it would be without the atmosphere. The greenhouse effect is one of the things that makes our planet habitable compared to other planets. However, as I said, the next few slides will go into it a little bit deeper. But what happens when we have, when the greenhouse gases, most commonly carbon dioxide, is at too high of a level? So we have to start to understand that the increases in carbon dioxide, primarily due to our use of fossil fuels, with the addition of our clear-cutting forests, as well as the increases in methane and nitrous oxide, which are primarily due to our agricultural practices, lead to greenhouse gas increase, which traps more heat, which affects melting ice caps, rising sea levels, thawing of permafrost, increase in forest fires, all which produce more decaying matter and in turn, once again, raise the level of carbon dioxide, and it becomes a cyclic process. Greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide are well mixed and long-lived. After all, we do live on a sphere. So in order to go a little bit deeper in the simplest terms, understanding the difference between producing more carbon dioxide, which are carbon sources, and sequestering or hiding away carbon dioxide, which are carbon sinks, helps us to understand what the term global warming really means. Carbon sources increase global warming, carbon sinks decrease. Things like forest fires, fires, fossil fuels, and even just breathing contribute to carbon sources. And things like oceans, plants, and soil contribute to carbon sinks. So again, really, really basic and quick science. And then if you want to bring politics into the conversation, you also have to understand what a carbon tax is for and how carbon offsets are being used to address these issues. So again, a little bit more information for you if you are looking to dig deeper with your students and looking for a place to start. We've included 3 videos here, and because we're having some difficulty with sound, I'm going to put a link to this video in the chat and give you a couple of minutes to watch it. And I will play it or I'll see how long it is and give you a couple minutes to go and watch it. But this one here from my favorite guy, Bill Nye, the science guy, he does a little bit more for junior level and intermediate level, an explanation of climate change. This guy here from CBC Kids does a wonderful basic explanation of climate change. And then the link that we're going to give you in the chat right now, and I'm going to try that as I'm hoping that this will work as I put it in the chat. I don't know why we're seeing you there, Pamela. I want to get rid of you. Sorry. I can't put anything in the chat here. Let's try this, and then you can tell me if you see that in the chat.
Yeah.
This is a video that's going to give you equates climate change to a Tetris game. So unfortunately, we can't play it. I'm going to show you what it looks like on the screen. And Pamela, maybe I'll just try it. Tell me if you hear any sound. Maybe we got lucky. Do you hear sound?
Very, very quiet.
It's a 3-minute video, so I'm going to ask you to click on that link in the chat, and we'll give you about 3.5 minutes to watch it and then invite you back to continue.
Judy?
Yep.
In the chat, it's from Sheila Halloran. I don't know if you can see that. It says the audio and visual seem to work. I can see the hostesses, but I can't see the shared screen. So I don't know if that's true for everybody.
Okay. Probably because I'm not. Sheila, if you can just give us an answer now, and I can't see that. Do you see my shared slide right now? Or if somebody in the chat could just see if I've got the slide up with the 3 videos on it. Can you see it, Pamela?
Yes, I can.
You're fine now for the slides. Excellent. Thank you very much. So I've got a little timer going here. I'm going to give people a couple minutes to watch.
Is it the egg timer, Judy? No.
Yes. Pamela, you can let me know when people are back. I have us at about 1:10 to go. We should see some people trickling back in the next couple of seconds. Well, I'm hoping that people are coming back. Hoping that somebody's going to respond and say we're back.
Yeah. Anybody out there?
You can let me know, Pam, if I can go on to the next slide. I guess it takes people a couple minutes to get to the video, and that's a shame because it does break up the flow of the presentation.
Okay. Yeah, here anyway. Hi,
Well,
Michelle.
somebody's here. All right. So we're going to get into now the meat and potatoes.
So I'm looking at these statements from a tweet from Vanessa and Nakata. And these statements draw our attention to the fact that climate change and all social inequities are truly connected. That's something that we don't always think about. And each statement is connected to the SDGs. Climate change will intensify each of these inequities, like hunger, poor health and disease, dirty water and lack of sanitation, economic inequalities. When countries are faced with climate change mitigation debt for flooding and for forest fires and hurricanes and the like, there is financial hardship, especially if you are a developing nation. Governments cannot pay to replace infrastructure that their people need. And it's the poor who usually suffer the most, as usual, in all of these problems. As well, unsustainable cities consume more than the world can produce. There's fighting and instability between the haves and the have-nots. People don't feel safe. Violence rises along with corruption and injustice. Now, this situation will affect all of us, no matter what country we're in or how much money we have. We continue to wake up to the fact that we live on a sphere, as Judy said earlier. What happens to one happens to all, though we may not be in the same boat, as has been pointed out. All species have been undeniably linked for millions of years, dependent on each other for their quality of life and their survival. As this illustration undoubtedly points out, trees talk to each other. But somewhere along the way, we've forgotten about this. How can we help ourselves and our students to begin to recognize the complex web of interdependencies that exist here on Earth, and to live and respond in the light of these truths? Teaching climate change is part of this larger realization. So perhaps we can show how our interdependence is another way by using the SDGs you see here and asking some questions that add and lead to critical thinking about sustainability, and helping kids to age appropriately engage with questions like this about their own community leads them to becoming more and more aware of not only the issues, but how they can help. This empowers our children as they realize they can make a difference. They're happy to help, and their well-being is fed by their actions.
I'm just giving an extra minute here for people to read the questions carefully and see which SDG goals they really can relate to.
So often as educators, we want our teaching journey to be pretty safe, controllable, predictable, like the staircase you see on the left. But life, real life, is not usually like that. So off we go into a more organic, inquiry-based pedagogy symbolized by the middle photo. We're still able to see our way, though it's less safe, it's less controlled, but richer to be sure. But as we explore best practices further as educators, it leads us to experience teaching and learning more like the right photo. We know we're headed across that stream, but there are many paths, not any one being the right path, and all being valid and enriching. It is less predictable, it's less controlled, but as the photo shows, it's oh so much richer and allows for more student choice and greater collective meaning and learning. How much more can be learned by this kind of journey?
Now, as educators, we have to ask ourselves, why are we challenged so much to bring climate change education into our curriculum? And we tend to shy away from it, typically because most of us, particularly elementary teachers who happen to teach science, don't feel that we have all the expertise necessary to address some of these complex issues. And as many times in an inquiry unit or idea, we have this inner fear that we're not going to be able to answer our students' questions instead of learning side by side with our students. The truth is, we can no longer avoid dealing with climate change. It touches every aspect of our lives and it's in the news constantly. So children hear about it every day. Climate change seeps into everything that we do. We have no choice but to bring to it some optimism and some hope, and to change our narrative and our thinking so that we can help our students find the ways that they can navigate to change the world in which they live, and that they can have a positive effect and influence. That's our job as educators. So if you look at this title of this slide, know where you're coming from and where you're going, we have to understand that every inquiry is going to look completely different depending on the class, the teacher, and the students involved. There are so many different paths that you can take and so many different stories to get us there. You'll see that we've made reference here to Trevor Mackenzie's sketch notes, and I've put the link in the slide so that when you have some time to explore this slide deck, take a look at some of Trevor Mackenzie's inquiry slides and sketches, and it really helps us figure out how we're going to get to where we want to go. In terms of the SDGs, it's important that you start small. We choose a path, and we try and bring in any of the goals that fit into any unit you're doing. Try to bring them in naturally, depending on the subject or the unit you're teaching. Even the age of your students, it's going to make a difference. Consider also what your students are interested in and what their curiosities are. But keep your to-do list short, very specific and manageable, so that we as educators also don't get overwhelmed. So we thought as a collective group of educators that we are, it's important that we explore where we are coming from. And I do love that quote by Carolyn Miss, that we are the engines of climate change. We are a part of it, and it's really difficult to exclude ourselves any longer. But the truth is that by understanding the problem, we also have to understand that we all are not saints, and we all contribute in some way. So by naming and understanding how we make choices in our life that actually contribute to the climate change problem really makes us human and helps us to navigate how we can make some changes. So we call these our dirty little secrets. And I don't know how much time we have in our chat, but it's always interesting for people to name them. Like I'll be very upfront and honest and say that I chose to live on a beautiful property on the lake. I moved there 4 years ago, but I do teach in Waterloo, Ontario at the university, and it's an hour-and-a-half drive. So I get into my car twice a week and I drive with no other passengers because there's no carpooling where I am. And so I drive by myself an hour-and-a-half each way, 3 hours return trip just to do my job. Now that's a choice I've made, and I realize that that's contributing to the climate change problem. But by naming that, I think I can start to look at what are some ways for me to make some changes. So I don't know how comfortable people are, Pamela, and how anybody wants to share any of their dirty little secrets. It always makes us a little bit more human.
Well, I can certainly share mine. I'm trying to wean myself from one-use plastic bags. I find it really challenging, and of course my neighbors all laugh at me because they see me hanging out my plastic bags. I wash and dry them, and I use them over and over. Heaven knows what comes off those things into my vegetables. I'm like, I don't know if I want to think about this, but I know plastic is a huge issue. So I didn't grow up with plastic. I grew up in the 50s. That makes me old. And honestly, we lived without those things. So I don't know, but I know we all have dirty little secrets and we all have our problems. So by talking with them about them with our kids, we really help to get the conversation going too and see what we can do about them.
Now, Pamela, I can't see the chat. Is anyone sharing a dirty little secret?
Oh, no, they've got some real good ones. They're not.
Okay.
Well, go on, Judy.
It's something just to think about. And
Yeah.
I think it really makes us human to our students too, to understand that although we are trying to build a new narrative around climate change, we all have to recognize that we too are a part of the problem. And I think that that's all we wanted to get across there.
So another good thing to do is to think back to when you were younger, and perhaps you remember some events or experiences that drew you into an awareness of the richness of the earth we live on and your place in it. It's a magical part of childhood to be outside. Think about those. How did those years nurture your connection and respect and caring for the earth? Do you remember the joy those experiences gave you? I do too. But as we get older, sometimes the business of life takes us away and our deep connection is interrupted by stuff, right? Real life. And sometimes we lose touch. We lose that magical connection. We don't even know it's gone. So my question to you is this: where are you now? Do you still go outside for those magical connections? Could it again become a priority for you? When we are connected strongly to the earth, then we can help our children to feel that magical connection as well. So how about a family daily walk, a bike ride, or just going outside by yourself and finding a spot to dial in to what's going on in the day and to decompress and deep breathe and feel connected? Because this is how we reconnect ourselves. We model it for our families, we model it for our kids at school, and we share our caring for the earth. Then the climate emergency becomes meaningful. It becomes authentic. We know the loss, and it makes it so much more real to our kids.
So once again, we wanted to give you and to model another activity that you can do with your students. And this dilemma game is actually a revision of a game that comes from the Canadian Wildlife Federation's Project Wild. There's a link to the game in the very top link. And the second link is a rewriting of the Project Wild, if you're familiar with it, with a humane lens. And that comes from the Humane Institute for Science and Policy. So this is a game, and we actually chose these particular dilemma that speak a little bit more to adults. There's lots of choices in the actual activity that help you just start these discussions with your students. So here are some examples of dilemma. We don't really have time to hear what you would think about these, but it's something to think about. Around 2.4% of global carbon dioxide emissions come from aviation. We've noticed that this year when there's been very few flights. Together with other gases and the water vapor trails produced by aircraft, the industry is responsible for about 5% of global warming. Should we give up flying for the sake of climate? What would you do? Or you're an avid camper that spends as much time as possible kayaking throughout the wilderness. You dream of a vehicle that holds all your gear and easily carries 2 kayaks. You've been given the opportunity to purchase an SUV at an amazing price. However, you realize that it will emit carbon like crazy. What do? Having a pedicure is one of the only luxuries you give yourself for years. And you've been going to the same nail salon with your daughter for a mother-daughter day. Now, after doing some research, you discover that the nail polish and its removers are considered hazardous waste because they are toxic and flammable. That means that when discarded, they sit in landfills and leach toxic compounds of words that I cannot even pronounce, among others, into the soil. What do you do? And finally, a recent study confirms, and this one speaks to me and hurts. A recent study confirms that pets' meat-based diet has a fatal impact on the climate, due mainly to high carbon dioxide emissions. In addition, our loyal friends are a big resource of consumers and waste creators. I can tell you that for sure. I have 2 big labs. Meat eaten by dogs and cats creates the equivalent of about 64 million tons of carbon dioxide a year. It hurts me to say this, which has about the same climate impact as a year's worth of driving from 13.6 million cars. Should pets be banned? What would you do? Some things to think about.
Another thing to think about is what your strengths are. What are your strengths? What do you bring to this table? What do you care about? What are you good at? Here's a quote from Robin Wall Kimmerer out of Braiding Sweetgrass, a book I highly recommend if you haven't read it yet. And she says, "The Three Sisters reminds me of one of the basic teachings of our people. The most important thing to know is our unique gifts and how to use them in the world. Individuality is cherished and nurtured because in order for the whole to flourish, each of us has to be strong in who we are, what our strengths are, and carry our fights with conviction so that they can be shared with others. So our strengths can be effectively directed into action."
So I'm going to speak for a moment about this idea of action, and just to understand the differences between taking soft action and taking critical action. So learning to do this with our students. And soft action, if I can sort of define what I mean by that, is taking action that makes us look and feel good. We promote recycling, we carry a mug, I have a litterless lunch. All of these things are visible, easy to do things that really make me feel good when I do that. But if we really want to teach our kids and we really want to get to the understanding some of the inequities in the world, we need to start to look at what is critical action, taking action that gets to the root cause of a problem. Well, it's important to dig deeper into finding ways to promote eco-justice. For example, how is pollution related to inequality? Or some of the questions that we asked way back with the slide that showed some of those SDGs and some of those critical questions. Trying to find out, how does pollution affect people experiencing poverty, for example? Why are neighborhoods that are most marginalized always in areas where there's the highest pollution? So we start to look at what are some of the root causes of the problem, and how do we empower our students to build on these strengths that Pamela was just talking about in the slide before. And again, thinking about those multiple intelligences, and find ways to connect to the knowledge. So what is in their head, the motivation, their heart, and the tools, their hands, to take action. And I love this quote from Maya Angelou that says, "You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have." So I wanted to just very quickly share with you another video. And this is an ad, as I get it up here. This is an ad that was created for Ontario's climate response. And I'm just going to come into the chat here and put that, I hope. And it's about, did that go into the chat? Pamela, do you see my link there?
Not yet.
I don't think it's the whole thing. Let me see if it takes me there. Yep, it should be there. I see it.
I can't.
I wonder if anyone else in the chat can see that. I can put it in there again just in case. Emily, do you see it now in the chat? Oh, somebody else has it already. Michelle has it. Yeah, so I'm going to give you, I think it's about It's only a 1-minute video, so I'm going to give you a minute to go there and have a look at this ad.
And then we're going to watch our time, Judy.
Yep. Right. Right.
Just saying.
Mm-hmm. Great. So people got the link. Yeah. Okay. It's going to be quick. So Pamela, you're going to let me know when somebody's back. Someone to let us know when you're back.
I will.
Video should be done.
Michelle said, great video.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle. You're a right-hand girl.
All right, Pamela, why don't you continue?
Okay, so I want you to look closely at these photographs. They are from the school that I've been at for over 30 years, and I have a couple of questions for you. Do these pictures look like the learning at your school? Could they? Would children dial in and care about climate change and the earth more if they were regularly out there for their learning? Learning that used the out of doors as a regular vehicle and connection for learning curriculum? What do you think those kindies are in the left photo? What do you think they learned by growing those sunflowers and showing them in the local fall fair? Or kids doing morning yoga in the center there in the winter when the bell rings before they go in? Or the grade 4s interacting with northern flying squirrels in the top right? How about those grade 2s growing container gardens full of vegetables and greens for their June lunches? There's lots of rich curriculum-laden opportunities and experiences to be had and to be mined, with a bonus, that of developing some connection with the earth. So in Straight Talk, this is what we've been speaking about all along. It's an interdisciplinary approach to climate change because the Earth systems are interdisciplinary. They're not just a single strand of science. So how can we involve the arts? How can we involve math, language? Get out there and get involved. It reduces our fear. It reduces our anxiety. Then we're not so much afraid as we have a resolve and we're motivated to find solutions. So in this video you're going to see next, it's worth looking at too. You'll see grade 3-4 kids at Bell Fountain reflect on what April weather brought them last year. And I want you to note that they're not complaining or anxiety ridden, but rather they're asking good questions. Another thing we need to teach our kids to do, right? So they are motivated to create this video and get their community thinking about climate change and what we can personally do.
So I've put the link in the chat, and it is, I believe, a 1.5 minute video. So if you can just take a moment and a half to watch that. Okay, Pamela, if you can let me know when people are back.
Okay.
We're going to count on Michelle. She's been doing a great job at letting us know she's back.
There's always a savior. You got a boogie too.
Yeah. Gonna be quick the next few slides.
Okay.
Okay. So very quickly, again, using Trevor's sketch notes, your path for inquiry-based learning is going to be very different, have a variety of different ways of approaching. So I've put a couple links in here. One comes from the Design for Change, the FIDS, the I Can Superpower Mindset, FIDS standing for Feel, Imagine, Do, and Share. It's really a design thinking approach to looking at climate change solutions. Pamela?
So here we have some examples of 4 spaces that you could use to empower your kids during inquiry. The first is the cave, and when you think of a cave, it's a place for independent work and reflection where kids can be by themselves and give it some think. And we all need that alone space. And sometimes we don't give enough alone space to our kids. We think they always have to be together. But a great way of doing it is to establish a spirit spot, as you see on the right. Sometimes it's called a solo spot or a sit spot. It just means when kids go outside, they have a specific spot on their playground or nearby where they can ponder. They can sit down and either work on something, sketch, write in their journal, or just simply think about a problem. Very important to cave with your kids. Another is the watering hole, and that's a place where you get together and there's collaborative group time. And if you know about KBCs, or knowledge building circles, which comes out of Natural Curiosities work, where kids get together in a circle and they add to each other's ideas. They don't debate, but rather they say, what do we collectively know and how can we build our knowledge together? The third is the campfire. And you think of a campfire and there's always a guy with a guitar, and there's always somebody telling stories. So that's a place where the group is gathering again, but they're sharing and they're working with others, maybe a bunch of people you don't know. And that's where community partners come in, because community partners, people you can link up with who are vested in the same kinds of things you're doing with your kids, are really important. And the last is, do we give our kids real world experiences? I noticed in the chat somebody said, oh, inspiring, but I wish we could do these. I want to let you know that I've been working on it for 30 years, so don't give up. And if it's been a roadblock or a challenge out there, I've experienced it and know the path is not easy, but oh so worthwhile. So keep going. Give your kids those real world experiences and keep working on the ability to do that.
We often think that inquiry has to be wide open and uncontrolled. So just this slide is just to remind us not to get hung up on where we are in the inquiry, because each one of us. Sorry.
Change the slide.
I did to inquiry continuum.
Oh, I can't see it. Now I can see it. Okay.
Everyone is doing inquiry in some form or another in their classrooms. So the visual think of how we can make it less about us and more about the child, moving from a very structured and controlled inquiry where the teacher's making most of the decisions, which is also an inquiry, to more of a guide on the side where the students are given a little bit more choice and can help in making decisions. Again, Trevor McKenzie's sketch notes really help with this.
I like to call it the slow release. The first time I took kids outside, I stood outside the school door and we just all huddled around there and we talked about the weather and we went in 5 minutes later. And the second time we went out for 10 minutes and we went a little further and a little further. No more would you take kids out and just have two, then you would take them into the gym and say, whatever, the sky's the limit. So it's organized in that sense. Training kids to see outdoors as their learning spaces is an interesting and very important thing to do. Take a look at this slide. I have reframed inquiry. And I see it now as a method of creating and telling a story by taking a deep dive into something of student interest, the goal of which is to share with others for their edification, thus changing the world. And kids can become investigative journalists. It gives us a model or something to think about. Is it messy? Yes, it is, but real learning is. But it's doable and an effective way to be with our kids. So LSF, as I said earlier, has created the Sustainable Future School. And here is the framework that we're offering to people, looking through an SDG lens at curriculum and how we teach it. We are currently piloting this approach at Bell Fountain, but we have 10 or 12 interested schools from across Canada on deck, and even into Europe, and one in the East. So over the next 2 to 5 years, we'd like to expand this program. So again, let me think about it. This circular framework shows us that we can start anywhere, but all 4 pieces need to be present. And Western education has often concentrated simply on the understanding. A lot of people are getting into the action piece, but then we still wonder why kids don't care. Well, you can't fall in love with someone you don't know, or at least that'd be pretty tough. So we have to take kids out. They have to be aware of what's going on in nature. They have to be aware of what's going on in their community, and then they're going to care. And that's the important pieces. And sometimes educators say to me, I don't have time for that. And I always say, you don't have time not to. So here's some examples that you can look at later from Bell Fountain of collective complex projects. The first is of an Indigenous species, invasive species festival that was created, and with the partnering with the local conservation authority. And on the right, you can see the goals that they were looking at, the sustainable development goals. And in that case, they were looking at partnerships for the goal, gender equality, good health and well-being, and sustainable communities particularly. Judy, you can change that slide. And in case you're thinking it's just older kids, Bell Fountain's a K-6 school, but the kindies do some of the best work, and they goat the older ones into doing incredible things. And you can see some kindergarten projects there. One of the ones they took out on was fast fashion, and that little video is worth seeing later on when you get these slides. It's amazing how intense and how passionate those kids are, even though they're 4 and 5 years old. So as you go forward, we'd like you to remember a couple of things. If you take away anything from this presentation, teaching climate change to younger children is more about fostering an awareness of what the Earth's natural, healthy state is, and recognizing that there's concerning change. But the good news is we can all be part of that real change. Also, as educators, we can get our kids outside more. We can help them engage with the curriculum in real world contexts, and we can help them to be involved with solutions, not just problems. Solutions for the issues that they care about themselves and that they see in their own communities. And lastly, looking through the lens of sustainability is a path forward to the future we want for our Earth and for our children, 7 generations and beyond. It is the way to help our kids learn age appropriately to deal with and to address climate change.
At this point, we want to share with you some resources specifically from Learning for a Sustainable Future, and then links to many other resources to help you get started. And we did want to take a minute just to walk you through this, because this first resource, Resources for Rethinking, I'm going to link to it. And Pamela, please tell me if you can see the link. Did it go there?
No. Not yet for me, but maybe I'm slow. Maybe some others can see it.
I think you're slow there. Okay. So I'm going to show. So this Resources for Rethinking is a website of 1,500 plus lesson plans, activities, literature, videos, et cetera, that is created by teachers 4 teachers, and each and every single resource, each and every single lesson or whatever is in there has been vetted by a team of educators, and really it's a fantastic searchable database. And it is worth me taking a minute to show you how you can do a search for something.
They can't see it yet. They can't see it yet. So maybe
Nobody can see it.
Well, Michelle can't.
No? Oh, man.
Could you drop the link in the chat? She said.
I can. That is a shame. But anyway.
It's r4r.ca.
I just put it in the chat there. And I'll just walk you through it. If you go to the gray search for resources on the right-hand side, I can do a variety. So I was going to do an example search for you. I can put in Nova Scotia, where you are. I can put in a grade level. I'm going to choose for this, just for this demonstration, I'm going to choose grade 4. You can choose your own grade level. I'm going to choose for subject. I'm not going to put a subject in because I want to see what comes up cross-curricular. For theme, though, I am going to put in climate change because that's what we're focused on right now. And then I can actually add in one of the Sustainable Development Goals if it happens to be where I'm working. But I want to see what comes up in terms of just a variety of resources. Not necessarily going to search for an action project or a particular resource type, but just so you see there are lesson plans, apps, games, and other tools, children's literature, videos, outdoor activities, etc. I'm going to very quickly do a search. And when I do this for grade 4, I come up with 38 results of activities. And each activity then, it's got a little icon here and it tells me if it's a lesson plan or if it's an outdoor activity or anything. Are you seeing my screen yet, Pamela?
No.
No, okay.
Well, the link is working, Michelle says.
Okay, all right. And then, yeah, once you click on the actual activity, you can see what its strengths and weaknesses are. You can see exactly where it's going to fit into the Nova Scotia curriculum, into which grade levels, into which subjects, into which particular units. So it's a very, very valuable resource. And then most of the resources are actually free. The link, once you get to the resource that says, get this resource, it's a big yellow bar. And I would say 95% of them are free. So there's a few books that you may have to purchase. So that is one really important resource that we wanted to share. And you need to spend some time playing with that.
And just remember, that's 1,400 different researches or different resources. So think about that. Let that one sink in. It's an award-winning site.
Yeah, K to 12. K to 12 for sure. Do you see my screen again now that has the resources, the slide?
No.
What are you seeing, Pam? What are you seeing?
I'm just seeing the resources from LSF slide, but nothing that you.
Yes, that's what I want to see. Yeah. Okay. So the next one, Learning Inside Out, I'm just going to talk about it. It comes out, it started as a response to the pandemic, and it's activities from K-12. Again, we're going to get students outside, sometimes with when they were working from home. But what's beautiful about Learning Inside Out activities, it comes to your inbox to sign up for this free resource. It comes every week, and each week it alternates between outdoor activities that connect to a certain theme, generally a theme of what's going on in nature outside, and the following week it's linked to a specific SDG, one of the specific Sustainable Development Goals. So the whole archive is there from last March. Every week it's come out since last March. So there's oodles and oodles of resources there. And the next one is a resource from LSF called Empowering Learners in a Warming World, grade 7 to 12. Many of the activities are easily adaptable to lower grades, and stay tuned to the LSF website this fall as we are hosting a series of webinars on each one of the chapters, each of the 9 chapters in Empowering Learners. So that's coming out.
And a whole host of other webinars are coming.
Yes. Other resources, the world's largest lesson, becoming a climate change maker, NASA Kids, Government of Canada, teaching kids about climate change from Green Teacher. These resources are particularly focused on taking action, Young Voices for the Planet, PBS Kids versus Global Warming, Canadian Geographic, Climate Atlas of Canada, and this is just a place to start. The very last thing we wanted to do is we wanted to acknowledge what this past year has been and how, in a positive way, do we help our students move forward. Again, I wish we could watch this video with you. For us, it's been a very, very meaningful video that we've watched many times, and I could keep watching it. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's by Tom Foolery, a wonderful poet, a young man who is a filmmaker, and just a beautiful way, we think, to end this. What am I doing here? I think I got the link in the chat.
Yeah, you do.
All right. And then I'm going to come back one more time. I don't know if I said that on time. I'm going to put the final back link in the chat. How do I do that? Oh, God. This is how I do it. Link is working. Oh, thank you, Michelle. It's 1 o'clock. I think, Pamela, what we'll do is put in the chat that the link to the feedback form is there, and they'll get the slides in case they don't come back. I didn't time that video, but we're out of time anyway.
It matters not. It won't go.
So we will just stay tuned. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Sarah. Feedback form gets you the slides.
With all the links.
I actually put the slide deck also. Oh, I'm going to make it, I'll make it public. So for anybody who didn't come to the session, they can also get a PDF of the slides. And then, Pamela, I'm just, after we sign off, I'm going to give you a call through WhatsApp.
Okay. So thanks everyone for being part of this. And if you have to rush off to another session or whatever, take care of yourself, take care of others, be well. And let's have some different goals for this year and shift our practice towards sustainability. Yay.